Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this open class tonight with a set of professionals in the football industry that are here today for the session called The Impact of Data Analytics in Professional Football Clubs. My name is Pablo. I'm one of the academic directors of the Masters in Data Analytics in Football in Sports at a campus and also a project manager. And with me today, we have top professionals from different angles of the industry, all related to data. So I'm going to introduce them. In my screen to my right, I have Pedro Jiménez. Pedro Jiménez is the head of MSc Academic Advising with Sports at a Campus and also part of the scouting department at Celta de Vigo with Rafa Benítez. Anselmo Ruiz de Alarcón is a sports analysis specialist at Chelsea Football Club, FC. Mario Antoniadis, at the bottom left of my screen, a professional football player at Cyprus national team. And then at the bottom right of my screen, we have Gabor, and Gabor is a client service executive at Stars Perform. Now, as you can tell, probably, we have quite an eclectic of people. So, guys, first of all, thank you for joining us today in the session. It's a pleasure to have you.
Welcome. Welcome, Pablo.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us, for the invitation.
I also must say that Gabor and Marius, they both about to finish the Masters or MSc Data Analytics in Football at Sports at the Campus with us. They've been, since March last year, coursing this program, so we can also have the point of view of the students who are learning on data analytics. But as you can see, and it's something I want to point out before we get started, we wanted in this session to have these guys because they can bring to the table different perspectives and different angles when it comes to how data impacts professional football clubs nowadays. Pedro will give us a lot of insights on the work and the dynamics of a data scouting department, in a top club in La Liga. Anselmo, master of data analysis, not only in football, but also in handball. He's got wide experience in different competitions with different clubs, and he can give us a good insights on how on a daily basis data is impacting top teams like Chelsea FC. And then we have Marius, a professional football player, which I wanted to bring into the session today because nothing better than a football player to give us insights on how data has changed and impacted his career in the last, let's say, 10 years, right? And then Gabor, because everything that is related to data in modern football, we need to bring into the account the industry, company, people that, provide data, work with data, and work with football clubs. And Gabor will give us some insights on that sense. So without further ado, guys, I want to start with the first question. And this question is open for everybody, so I would like us to have a discussion. And the question is, obviously, you guys have more experience than I do. But in my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think when we talk about data in modern football or in football, is it correct if I say it's still a baby? So I don't know what you think in that sense, but I think we are still at the very beginning of a huge change when it comes to football. Is that how you guys see it as well?
So it's interesting to take the 10 years approach because I remember a famous book, The Numbers Game, from Chris Anderson and Sully. This book is from 2013, so almost 10 years. And the last chapter of this book tried to forecast what will be the football in 10 years. So we have this period fulfilled, finish it in 2023. To be fair, it's difficult to be accurate on the forecast. We cannot be hard with them, with Anderson and Sully, but at least half of the forecasts of Anderson and Sully were accurate. So what is interesting for me? The interesting is the 5 that were not accurate, because this is what is more difficult to understand sometimes, because as you said, Pablo, because we are in an industry that is not the chemistry, it's not the food, it's another chemistry, it's another type of industry, and the wage and the waves of development and innovation are different from another. It depends sometimes of a luxury problem for many of the investors and many of the companies that invest on that. And with any doubt, if I have to summarize, my vision is eventing is almost at the 100% of the fulfillment that we can do in this moment with eventing data
And
tracking.
Yep.
Yes, and development and tracking and artificial intelligence is not. It's even lower on a lower level than I expect. Not 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when Amisco started. So this is my vision in this moment.
It's interesting that you said machine learning and AI, because I think that is something we can apply to pretty much every aspect of life nowadays with the boom of AI, and how it's impacting our life in so many levels, but obviously when it comes to football as well, right? So, okay, so expanding on this, I want to ask you all then, more following on that, what is your view on how that data has changed football and football clubs, obviously, in the last 10 years? From different perspectives. I don't know, for example, Marius, you are a football player, right?
Yes.
And obviously, I imagine from your experience in different clubs throughout your career and also a national team, obviously not every club works with data the same way, not every club embraces data the same way, but have you noticed a change in the way data is present in the daily life of a football club? And also, have you noticed any change in terms of how it's affected your performance in a positive way?
Yes. First of all, my first interaction with data was exactly 10 years ago when I played the Champions League group stage with Abuel. And it was my first interaction. I received report after the game, data. I didn't know what is this. Because I was used to just watching video of the opponent I would face in the game. Now, 10 years later, I think data is reducing the gap between one big team that have a huge budget with a smaller team. You understand that the gap is not so big anymore.
Yeah.
With data, they can bring players through data, and the matchup between the teams is closer and closer and closer.
I see.
You can see Real Madrid lose from Girona, let's say. You can see
Yes.
Real Madrid lose from any team. Before it was not like this. In a personal view, I developed a lot through data. Many of my weaknesses, I was trained to improve them.
And do you have like people in the different departments like coming to you with data, explaining different things of the game, or with the coach? How did that process
Yeah,
work?
it depends on the team, but the process is we have an analyst, let's say, he provides us the data, and also individually, also as a team, with for the opponent that we're gonna face, what we're gonna face in the game. You are more ready to enter in a game.
Yeah. You got more information before the game to know what to expect.
Yes.
I imagine. No? It's like I've heard many times players that work with Pep Guardiola, right? And they say before the game in the changing room, he tells us what's going to happen, and that's what actually happens. Like it's like he's so he knows so much. He obviously have a big team, I imagine, around him, not only himself, right? But he predicts not only one scenario, but several scenarios to the players or what to expect of the game, and they constantly say precisely what he says. What he said is what happened in the game. No? So
also in my country, I think data is baby. Now.
Fair enough. That's a fair point that I want to tap into as well. Obviously, yeah.
Only few teams are working with data.
Yeah.
Two teams that you have collaboration with.
Yes,
let's say
Apoel
another
and Aris.
Aris, national team, okay, but it's still a baby in Cyprus.
I think that's the thing. Like for example, I mean, Pedro and Anselmo, you both working in clubs in La Liga and Premier League, right? Like, I don't know if you have previous experience with other clubs, but what can you tell us in terms of like, do you see that it changes a lot from club to club?
Well, so welcome everyone. So according to this question, I agree with Anselmo and Marius. It depends a lot on the market and the team you are working for, because it changed a lot. And actually, we know, Pablo, different examples working with different even football coaches, that it's not the same to work with Mourinho as an example, or to work with another coach in the French league, because they have different perspective about data and about how they can implement this data to their daily work, So for example, in my case, I've been working in Newcastle United. This was my first job in scouting 8 years ago. And then I went to Everton, to all the clubs that Rafa Benitez went, through now until Celta. And each club has different perspective to work with data. You have different tools, of course. In my case, apply to scouting, which is my role. But Rafa, for example, my coach is very obsessed with data. So not all the coaches, and I can say are the same, because I know, and they give different level of importance to different how to work with this data. In the scouting, with the injuries, with their staff, whatever they want. But what is sure is that through all these years, as Anselmo and Marius were saying before, data changed a lot. We don't know. In my opinion, this is not the peak. Anselmo summarized really well with the eventing and tracking, because he's expert on that, but for sure, there are everyday different tools to work on. Actually, for example, in this transfer window, we went in Afotesa in Vigo. Many different new companies, startups, were offering to us in order to work with the scouting department. They wanted to offer another artificial intelligence tool because it's new, because it has this. The other one doesn't have it. So we have to balance between what we have in order to make decisions. So this is my perspective. Data is changing a lot. We already have different options to manage with data, but in my opinion, this is not the peak yet,
Very interesting what you're saying, because Jose Rodriguez, former student and now analyst at Aston Villa FC, he was saying, obviously, he's seen, since he's been at Aston Villa, he's seen different managers coming in and out, right? And he says that it really changes the dynamic within the club, because, for example, in the training ground, they spend the working days on a weekly days there. And he says, Emery embraces data a lot, to the point that we actually have lunch in the same table at the same time that the players and the staff, the data department, as opposed to other managers before that. Yeah, those are the data guys or the scouting guys, and this is the staff, and this is the players, like separating and almost having them, they are there, like not bringing them into account as much, And I think that's very interesting, because from manager to manager, it probably changes from culture to culture in terms of teams. And I wanted to ask also Gabor, because beyond your the job you're doing now with the Stars Perform, do you have experience also in Hungarian football, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I was working as a video analyst for an academy, then for the federation itself, from under 15 up to the A team. So as Marius mentioned, the baby steps, we also had some baby steps, but we have taken those since 2015. So I wouldn't say that we are data heavy, but from this season, Stats Perform is the data provider of the first division, and from next season we will cover all the youth national leagues, so under 15, 16, 17, 19, and also some third division clubs. So yes, I can say that in Hungary we are getting there in data wise,
which is amazing. And I think it goes along with what Mario was saying about how, obviously, if you're Real Madrid, or if you are, I don't know what national team, but talking about clubs, if you are the club with the most money and the most historical success, you have an edge. But at the end of the day, data makes us all a little bit equal. No, it's more democratic in that sense, because obviously, if you cannot hire the top players because you don't have the money, you don't have the means, etc., how can you, from other angles, really, fight back? And using data is one of the keys, I imagine. But my next question, and this is open, we're going to start from you, Gabor, since you were just giving us some insights. Where do you see, we're talking about, data in the last 10 years especially has come on in football, is here to stay, brilliant. But where do you see? It's two questions. First one, in the last 10 years, where do you think data has impacted the most in a football club? Is it been more in the recruitment side of things, scouting, etc.? Is it been more in the pure performance analysis? Is it been more regarding, I don't know, injury prevention, opponent analysis, tactics, or even beyond the game, like in ticketing, in fan engagement, etc.? Where do you think, Gabor first and then everyone else, that this impact and this change that we're talking about that's happened in the last 10 years, where do you think it's been more noticeable?
I think first and foremost, they started it with the match analysis segment. So both own performance and the opposition analysis. And afterwards, I would say scouting was second. Quite close, but it was second. It took some time for each and every club to figure out what are their KPIs. Yeah. And obviously getting used to something new, as data was new back then. First steps are hard to make, and it was hard to change the mindset of people. So, and about ticketing, I would say that's quite recent. So that's
okay. That's come later.
Few years. Yeah. Okay. From my point of view, yeah.
And what about the rest? Have you guys? What can you tell us from your point of view that it's been those areas? Obviously, I think Gabor goes something there like pure tactics, analytics, and performance, and then scouting. But is that the way you've noticed it as well?
I think that, yes. I think
go ahead, Mario.
Go ahead.
And recruitment. And about recruitment, Aris last season was champion in Cyprus.
Yeah.
They came from second division and they win the league.
Okay.
And except from 1, 2, 3 players that are well known, the others were from recruitment. Nobody knew. It's players that they recruit, and I think it's through data.
Amazing. And I think in this point, before Pedro and Anselmo have the view, I think it will be very interesting to analyze when it comes to recruitment and scouting, especially the difference between being a club that tends to develop players and then sell them or acquire players at lower price. Those players, they get to be good and develop and then sell those players, as opposed to be those teams that end up buying those players to become champions. Not like I'm thinking about half middle table teams as opposed to Real Madrid's, Manchester City's, etc. No, I think it's probably a big difference in the way the data is impacted in that sense.
So in my experience, I have worked in different things. Do you hear me well?
Yeah. Yes. We hear you.
Yeah.
You froze for a second, but we hear you. So yeah.
So
we hear you perfectly.
Yes. The main difference, more than the budget, more than the focus of the evaluation of the transfer market value market, is the age. So what is the age of the players that you focus? Because we can build a matrix of 2x2 with 4 possible cases that are high budget, looking for youth players, or looking for all players. Low budget, looking for young players, or looking for all players. So this is really in my experience, the main difference is the age of the players that you have to evaluate, even when you are evaluating a rival with a position. So all the people say, okay, this is the typical B team, no? Like filiales in Spanish. No? When you play against filiales, against B teams, the reserve teams, is a team that changed a lot, that switch. So it's something similar with the ages of players when you have to evaluate them for recruitment, but also as own players, about the expectations. And this is the moment that more influence is the development, because the development of players don't finish with 18, 17 years old. Sometimes, and even more, the agents of the players have recruited their own analyst, and there is a niche for employment also for our pupils, not just the clubs, not just the companies, but also the agencies. So for that point of view, the big difference for me is not between different budgets, because at the end of the day, okay, you can have more resources, but normally when you have more resources, you have more time pressure. So it's a balance.
Fair point. Fair point. Yeah. And more to choose as well from, so it's probably harder, you know. Yeah.
Yes. For me, the main difference is that it's easier to evaluate an old player than to evaluate a young player. It's easier to evaluate and this is for me the one of the keys that normally is hidden.
Interesting point of view on that, and I think Pedro, you can probably tell us more on that sense, especially with experiencing the different market windows, no, that we've had recently in January, etc. Have you noticed, for example, age being a relevant factor? I imagine in terms of the recruitment process, no?
Yeah, 100%, and I am pretty much agree with Anselmo. The age is a very important fact, and of course, from my point of view, and I'm gonna talk recently with Celta in this transfer window that we were working late, you know, because we have to organize everything late. We changed the sporting director. Marco came in when the transfer window was already started, you know, so we have to settle everything. But the age is very important fact. First of all, because in my point of view, you have to build, when you're recruiting players, of course, with the data, you have to balance the team. So it depends on the team you are. For example, there are teams that they have very young players, okay, and old players, but you have to balance between them, you know, for example, and also it depends a lot about the coach, because there are some coaches that they want to bet a lot on young players. But also, if you want to be competitive, and we were talking about this, you know, when recruiting players, we have many lists, and at the end of the day, you have to look if you are going to put young players, you know, because this is a high demanding league. For example, in La Liga with Celta de Vigo, and especially because we are fighting for not to relegate this year. So we need to compensate if we have young players that they can adapt easily. They can perform well, because it's very difficult to be accurate on that, you know. And then you have immediate performance that we call, which is the old player that we can evaluate his performance in another leagues that are similar to our league, like for example Premier League, in a high demanding situations. And this is very important in order to compensate it.
Especially,
then, of course, yeah.
Especially, sorry for interrupting you, when your project is based on not being relegated this year. Like it's keeping a balance between building for the future, but also
that's it
for the now, right? No, like we're gonna build for the future with youngsters, but we need someone who can guarantee that is gonna perform in the next 15 games of the league, or whatever is left, you know, whatever was left when the transfer market was on. No?
Yeah, that's it. Because if someone tells you no, we are only looking for the future, they are lying to you, because all the managers, they have pressure and they need to win tomorrow and the next Sunday and the next Sunday. So they need players also that, of course, can perform quickly, you know. And then you can adapt and you can also mix with players, of course, that they can have minutes, that they can develop. There are young players that they are very mature. This is not the normal case in all the teams, but because many people and many fans, of course, think this player has very good qualities, technically, tactically, but it's very difficult to manage how they compete in a high level, you know. Apart from that, they can do a good game or a good match, you know, but this is more than that. Okay, so you have to compensate with that, and you have to also adapt to the way that a coach plays, you know. And this is also very, very special, because I've been working with different also sporting directors, managers, etc. And the sporting director also has his own perspective, because he wants to build a team for the future. and the manager wants to be a team for the future because he has a project, but also he needs to win because he's in a big pressure. So both of them, they tell you what they need. So you have to match it, in
You have to
order
do the
to find the right
impossible.
player.
You have to do the impossible.
So it's not that easy. Like people say, why this team signed this player, for example, that they don't understand from outside, and maybe it's because you have the salary mass you don't have, or you need some player that covers a position that you miss. There are many things on it that you have to balance. That of course we can talk about it 3 hours.
Yeah.
From the perspective of a player, of a manager, so yeah. But I think this is more or less my perspective on that.
Thank you, Pedro. And I wanted to expand on what Gabor initially said about the two main areas that data he thinks has impacted football. We're talking about the recruitment side of things, but also the actual analyzing opponents and performance. And at this point, I wanted to ask Anselmo, because obviously working at Chelsea currently, I wanted to tap into, for example, recently you have the League Cup final against Liverpool, right? Big game. How data is impacting a club or how you guys are using data to prepare for such a game, a final at Wembley, top teams in a top country for football, million of eyes watching. How is data helping you guys, or how you use data to help the team win for a match like that? If you could expand.
There are two main factors when you go for a final. The first one, when you take the data, is to consider that normally a final is played in a neutral pitch, in a neutral field. So when you are building simulations, scenarios, the profile of the rival, even your own profile, normally you consider the home advantage effect. There is no bigger effect than the home advantage effect in football. You can consider whatever. You can consider the influence of a coach. You can consider the influence of signings at the middle of the season, but there is no factor as the home advantage effect. So when you play a final, not always, but normally, you have to consider for your calculations, for your data, the neutral. What is the issue? That normally, when you calculate a neutral field scenario, you consider the home, the away games, and you blend them. But it's not a proper simulation. Why? Because the issue that is good in the World Champions, in the World Championship, in the Euros, is that there are really neutral fields. When Spain play against Morocco in Qatar, it's a neutral field. Okay, it could be more fans from Morocco, but this is one factor inside the home advantage effect model. So this is a challenge. This is a model for regression that I was using, but it's interesting also to use more capabilities from the machine learning and another issues. So it's interesting because normally the teams change a lot from home to away, not just for the performance. It's about the style also. So this is normally, I have here a notebook that I take normally for the finals I play, one for football, another for handball. With experience, you realize the cues that you didn't attend before. And you say, okay, if I play next final in the future, I will consider this. And this is for me the challenge, to consider how to calculate the neutral, how to take neutral gains, and how to consider this. This is from one part. The other is, okay, it was a final with two teams with so many injured players. So when you have to calculate, to weight a simulation of what can happen, you need to consider the players that are available. Of course, it's impossible in a final to forecast who will be the starting 11, and with the 5 switches, it's less important the starting 11. What will be the possible maximum 5, 6 substitutions on the match? This is impossible to forecast. The level of I square, if you don't want to use the impossible word, the level of forecasting the reliability is low. But what you can do is to consider the players that are not available. Sometimes, because sometimes the clubs, the coaches try to hide and to know more in handball than in football. In handball, it's easier to do that. But in football, normally the day before, 2 days before, you know.
You don't give clues to the opponent, right? So they can.
Yes.
They can.
I can tell a history of the final of FC Barcelona Athletic Club of the Copa del Rey about that, about Gerard Piqué.
Okay.
That was not really even. I think that they know that we can maybe watch, and they watch us in the private training, but in the La Cartuja Stadium, it's difficult to have private. And it was a very interesting theater about, I have pain here. And the day after, Piqué was really ready. We won with Athletic Club of Bilbao 4 months before the Supercopa, the Super Cup, but then the Copa del Rey, they went to us. So it was a final, this Chelsea-Liverpool, with so many injured players, not available players for both teams. So when you have to provide a simulation, because a simulation is not a forecast to know if you say the truth. No, it's to know the possible scenarios, to calculate a generic possible scenario. So it's very different when you have, with your rival, have 7, 8, 9, 10 different players that normally don't play together. It's interesting to know at least. And for that, you have an ending final result that is okay. We have 4 big categories that in my model, that is through balls, cross aerial, out of box shots, and counterattacks. What happened? There is any change with these 10 players? Is more balanced to cross aerial, more balanced to through balls? Will they keep their counterattack like the Opta Perform model that had blended models? So this was the preparation of the game. And of course, the most interesting for me was the 2-3 issues that I will take in account if I go for a final in the future. One of them, it will be to calculate better the contribution of players with few minutes in professional football, but to take in consideration games that they don't play in not in the first level, but what could be an interesting cue for young players. This was my experience.
Interesting, not to see how something that seems very obvious. No, I guess is you learn from your mistakes, but in this case, from a specific scenario, which is a final, a neutral final, and what things you didn't take into account as much that you think that actually impacted the game in some way that you're gonna bring into account for coming games or coming finals you might play, right? And now thanks for sharing all that, Anselmo. And I think now having Mario's here will be very interesting to see. Okay, you've played finals, you've competed at top level in Europe. So do you, for example, Anselmo is doing all this work prior to the game.
We didn't have things like Anselmo, to be honest.
Fair enough. But for example, in terms of, I was just thinking, I was the other Saturday at Mestalla watching live Valencia Real Madrid game, and I'm thinking about, because you play as a right back or left back, right? I'm thinking about, imagine you have a final when you face a player, let's say Vinicius Junior, for example, a player that you know is key for the outcome of the game, and your the way you defend the player is going to be paramount to get a good result out of the game. So how, in your experience, your coaches, your staff, but also from a data perspective, if it can be, how before important game the team works with you, the staff works with you in order to give you advice, to give you some insights. Any case that you can tell us about situations where you've been before, where they sat down with me and they said, look, this player, you have to do this, give us some examples of some cases when something like that.
I will tell you one experience I had with Messi. We played Barcelona in Camp Nou. I was, I think, 23 years old, left back.
Messi. I was gonna say, who's Messi? No, like, wow,
Yeah.
man. You had to
I had
defend Messi.
to match Messi. And okay, our coach, he said to me, he goes with his left foot a lot. I was saying, okay, he's Messi. I knew who was Messi. And he tried to help me not so in a tactical way, but in a mental way, to not be
Okay.
afraid. He said to me, he destroy every opponent he have. You don't have to be afraid, let's say. He was trying to help me mentally, and really that game, we lost 1-0, and I did amazing game.
Amazing.
But inside the game, when he passed me, let's say one time, he was shouting to me, the coach, I told you close his left foot. And I said, coach, I closed his left foot. He passed me with the right foot. And we were laughing both.
Yeah, exactly.
But in the
Yeah,
big games,
I'm gonna be his kryptonite, but then he comes with another
from
result.
my experience in big games, is mental.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Not that obviously, today we
You have
hear
to be strong mentally, because there will be fans from both teams. It's a final, let's say, all finals. Stronger mentally will have an advantage, I think.
because
Plus the tactical analysis, of course.
yeah, but I think it's a good point what you're saying. You have all the information. You already know what to expect from him in terms of the kind of things he's gonna do, the passes he's gonna do, the dribbles he's gonna do. But then, if having all that information, if you don't actually come with the strong mentality,
yeah.
and that is interesting because obviously we're here talking about data today, and data is what unites us all here. But at the end of the day, there is something else there in football that cannot be measured, right? Which is attitude, which is mentality, which is all these factors that obviously I imagine it's hard to put them into numbers or to put them into
I think this is the most difficult part for data to take in consideration mentality or attitude.
Especially in as Anselmo was saying, in a neutral game, no? Because obviously there are, I guess, some statistics we can get out of. Okay, playing away is different, and we can expect certain things as playing at home and stuff. But when it's a neutral, it's even more complicated. So, Gabor, from a company point of view, from an industry perspective, like I imagine with such performance and with your experience also in football, what do you think will be the next thing or the next elements or areas that companies could potentially focus on to start to give better insights, better data, better variables to football clubs? Because I guess, and I think Pedro was saying this, no, during the transfer market, there were like many startups and companies trying to, sell their products to Celta de Vigo. It's like, my tool is going to help you, my tool is going to help you. And at the end of the day, there is more and more companies coming up, but what can you tell us from the perspective of the industry on different areas that you think companies and data providers will be working on for the future to give an edge to their product and the teams?
Yeah, really lovely question. Now that you think about if you think about just a few years back, it started in a conference that's a university student came up with the idea with XG, and a few years later, one of the companies started the XG model, and then another one started, and so on. And then came the expected goals on target, and now we have expected threat, and so on and so on. So now we have a model which shows the passing probabilities, which you might see in some of our pictures. Yeah, and we are coming up shortly with a new idea. I cannot really go into specifics, but It will be about tracking from broadcast videos in a more accurate way.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I think the different tools being developed, and I think, for me, my point of view, and correct me if I'm wrong, or add more to what I might say, machine learning and all the probabilities and all the technologies that are coming on age to football will definitely bring in new ways of, or more accuracy ways to measure things, more accurate ways to give insights into every possible aspect, every possible KPI that you can imagine. So I think it's very interesting to see from the industry as well, that kind of like constant fight on what's the next big thing, and who's going to bring it to the table. I think.
So for
Yeah,
me, just
and- Go ahead.
a focus about Gabor is very interesting because I feel the improvement of stats perform regarding expected goal on target. In my vision, the most important metric in football is expected goal on target, is the pillar of all what happened in football. We have this metric since 2018 thanks to Stats Perform and the group starts afterwards with a new company. And it's key because they are considering more and more because this accuracy on video. So sometimes it's not about create new metrics. Sometimes it's about become more accurate. It's like the history of biology. You have the model of DNA and you need more and more accuracy in the study of biology. So in this moment, I really believe when I see the data of expected goal on target, why? Because now stats takes in account the speed of the ball, the angle of the globe, of the hand of the goalkeeper sometimes. We have now enough cameras, and when you have to evaluate the expected goal on target, it's really interesting. And just 10 seconds, Gabor has been very interesting comment regarding this student with expected goal, But remember that Pollard in 1998, he don't call expected goal, but he creates the idea, Charles Pollard, with about something similar to expected goal, but nobody, even mine, that I was reading at that time, I read that paper and I say myself, okay, interesting. Another thing, I look. No, if I was clever, when I read in 1998 that paper of Pollard, I could take an advantage. But the industry started, as Gabor said, in 2013. It's 15 years of gap, 15 years of competitive advantage. So I'm sure that there are some metrics that has been presented now, has been the mid-Sloan conference, MIT Sloan conference past weekend. There are a lot of ideas now regarding pressure, regarding another. For that reason, it's very interesting the comment of Gabor. So when start, sometimes the idea is from a student, but taking account the accuracy, not just to create new metrics, but to read which metric has been proposed and to be more accurate with the metrics created. Thank you very much, Pablo, Gabor.
No, I think it was very, very interesting to see that, especially you, Anselmo, who, you've been involved with data for many years now. So you can see that. You can see how an idea or something that came up at a time might not have been taken into consideration at the time, and now it's key. So I think it's very interesting because also, obviously, Gabor and Mario here are students of the Masters currently. And as part of the Masters, we do the Master Final project. And we obviously give total freedom for the students to explore the areas they want to explore for this project. And you never know what idea or what way of putting things can actually make a big impact in the industry. Even if you're coming from doing your masters from a humble way of, I'm going to try to do my best and see what can I do, but you never know, because at the end of the day, especially in your case, having the experience, you can probably have a really good understanding of, okay, what are we missing, or what could be really helping us next, no? And Anselmo, very, very interesting. Maybe we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to be better with it and find different ways to use it better, no? And instead of coming up with new things all the time. So I find that very interesting. And I'm going to change now a little bit, if you allow me, guys. Not kind of change the topic. Going back to the recruiting process and the scouting, because I've been in different lectures, and I've heard that the pandemic, the year 2020, was a turning point, right? In terms of, I'm thinking about the old way of doing scouting, for example, and how clubs will be paying lots of money for scouts to go to South America to just, watch our players. And I remember, I don't know who was telling this. Was it Victor Horta? He was saying something about, this guy was paid to travel to South America to watch 3 games of this particular player. It was 3 or 4 games. And in the first game, he got injured. He couldn't play the other 4 games. So basically, they wasted the money to go there and explore that particular player. They could watch other players, obviously. But I think data was here, and then the pandemic hits. We couldn't travel. But, scouting and football had to carry on. So, Pedro, I think that year really changed the game from a scouting perspective and recruitment perspective first, but in all the areas. Have you noticed a big difference from that pandemic 2020 onwards?
Yeah, very good topic to talk about, because I have a big reference. I think I talked to you before, Pablo, about this, talking about football in general. So, for example, my father, who is now 65 years old, he has been scouting Liverpool, Inter Milan, Napoli, Chelsea, many different elite football clubs during all his career, during almost 30 years. And the way you were talking before about doing the old scouting, when I was a kid, and I was growing in this environment, seeing my father traveling around the world, just to scout some players, to see 3-4 games in a row, when he was going to South America, whatever, to Russia, whatever, it changed a lot. Of course, this is the old way to do scouting, which was like pen and paper, and you have to watch all the players. And
the amount of games you have to watch, there's no time in life to watch.
Yeah, a lot. And then maybe you lose some papers because you were not putting all the information, like nowadays that you have databases. I'm using a daily database, which we have evaluations, we have all the private information, skills, everything, for a player. And before, my father was not doing that, and they were signing really good players, but through the years, as you said, and talking about the pandemic especially, for example, myself, I'm traveling, not that much, but mostly I'm working from home when I'm scouting nowadays because of the data. The data advanced technology that we are using nowadays with different tools like Y Scout for video scouting, as an example, that everyone knows this tool, or the statistics, or Opta, or whatever, So, and we can scout more players in a brief time, because we have a lot of players to scout, and it's also very affordable for the clubs, because you can watch more players from your home and then put all the information and the reports easily and send to the sporting director, to the coach. So you are in touch with all of them in a very easy way. That, for example, before was not like that. It was very complicated. You had to call to them, and then, for instance, travel to the training ground, whatever, because my father was used to do that. Of course, by phone, talking to the manager, the sporting director, but it was a different way to scout. So, of course, and this is the most important topic in my point of view for now, the importance and the impact of data analytics in football. It helps a lot to the scouting and recruitment departments, to all of us who are scouting, in a very easy way, in order to storage also all the information and then we can easily access. For example, I'm watching a lot of players every day. This is my case now. So young players, not very old, young players. So it's impossible that in my head, and I have good memory, in my case, but it's impossible to remember
You can
all
retain,
them, technically, tactically, how they perform in this game, in that game. I can remember many of them, but not all of them. So for that, and for organize and have a structure, if you are working in a professional football club, you have to have this. Not only for now, but also for the future. Because players, I don't know if Anselmo were talking about that before, but players and the time's changing. One player who is 18 now, in 2 years later, is totally different, maybe, because he cannot adapt to a league, or maybe he improved a lot technically, tactically. So it's another player. So you have to have a reference to guide and to measure it, and data, for example, in my case, it helped me a lot. For example, where we are looking for a player for a center back, I'm going to give you an example. We were looking a player who is good on the ball when we are playing out from the back, for example, which is very important, in my opinion, for a center back. Apart of many other things, of course, tactically, aerial duels, whatever you want, but data can give you a reference. This is very important. It gives us the reference, but it's not everything the data. Because, for example, if a player who is playing and he has a 90% accuracy on their passes, but we analyze which kind of passes of this center back to the other center back, to the goalkeeper, he's going with verticality, he's driving the ball so you have to analyze the context, but for sure the data is crucial nowadays to have this reference and to give you the first insight,
I was going to say, because obviously I imagine, and I've heard Victor Horta talking about this before, like you use data all the time, of course, I understand that. It's crucial, it's key in all levels that you can imagine, but obviously you will never, I guess, sign a player without watching him as well. Like I'm talking about, all the data is pointing out to the fact that this guy fits perfectly with my team. This guy, he's got all the data, everything we've been looking for, with all different variables we've been looking for. This is the guy, but I wouldn't sign him without watching him first. And I mean, probably watching him live, not just on video, like to get a feeling, because I think we all here love football. We here love how data is impacting football. But I think there is something beyond data that is intangible, which is that feeling that you get when you watch a player, no? And I think probably Marius can tell us this. Like we all watch Messi on live TV, no? But we haven't been marking Messi or defending Messi. I think that's another level of seeing a player and having a feeling of how fast he is, or how, Marius, sorry, you were going to say.
No, I was going to ask the same. If they see the player live after they use data.
Yeah, so this is very interesting. I was gonna add it after Pablo finished. So this is my opinion. This is very controversial, because I found many scouting departments from different teams that usually, this is true. The usual things is that, okay, you can follow. You have a structure, as we say before. You can follow them on different tools, databases, whatever. And then if you are gonna, before signing them, of course, you have been following them for a long time. Usually it depends a lot on the context, necessity, etc. Okay, and then you go watch them online. This is the usual thing. But I found many of my friends in this work industry, in this football industry, that they sign players without watching him live. It happened. This is not the usual. This is my opinion, But for example, in my case, I like to watch them live when we are gonna make the final decision, at least for few games, because so for instance, we were following one player. Okay, we were gonna sign him, and in this game, for example, in the game I watched him, he didn't touch the ball, because he was playing against an opponent that has the possession, in all the games. So you have to watch them in different contexts. You can do it from home, of course, but also you have to feel this sensation when you are in a stadium. Okay, you can feel how the team drop off, how they are off the ball, how they position when the ball is here on the other side and he's here. Of course, you can watch it also in videos if you put the full game. But for me, it's different. If you ask me for my perspective of scouting, is different because I have all the panoramic vision when I'm watching the game, so I understand and I read better the game collectively and individually. This is my perception. Maybe another scout, they tell you, okay, so for me, I can make a decision if I watch them playing in Wild Scout in 10 games, as an example, and they do it. You can do it, but for me, the correct way to do it is combine both ways. Of course, you need to make it faster with Wild Scout if you really want to save time, to be efficient, not only, I'm talking about Wild Scout, but then there are many different options. But
Yeah, you should talk about Opta.
Or whatever. Yeah. So this is my perspective, but you will have many different opinions on this case, huh?
And I think, I'm sorry, you were going to say, Anselmo, you go.
That is interesting, the approach from Ian Graham, that he was working for many years in Tottenham and afterwards in Liverpool. When you work in a club or when you work in a supermarket, there are different, as Pedro says, there are different visions, different perspectives, and it's good. It's good not to have the same mentality. In this way, the Latins, we normally have an advantage because even and the people from Danubio, from the river also, we have a good mentality. Okay, it's not a square. It could be different visions. So Ian Graham was very interesting because he was the boy, he was the employee that normally just look to data. And it's very interesting to go for a table, to have 7, 8, 9 people in the table, and to have one that just go to the stadium, another that just go to data, another that just go to video, and blend it. But it's interesting because I'm sure, and I have worked in this environment, that you will take interesting insights from all of them, not the real truth from one that is the real truth. No, it's interesting. When you work as Ian Graham, people that just go for data, it's interesting. And when you work with people that just go for football live without video, it's interesting to have all of them in the same table. Of course, not all time, not in a brainstorming mood, but it's interesting to have different vision. What happened that normally when you are in a big club with a big budget, you have more possibilities to have that. When you are in a low budget, you don't have this luxury. But for instance, Ian Graham, that will release in August his new book about how to win the Premier League. I'm really, really interested about that because there are a lot of legends and there are a lot of truths regarding him. So this book, it will be interesting because it's this type of man on the room that just go to data. And it's interesting to have these different visions on that. I remember Rafa Benitez, when he was working with Antonio from Pozo Blanco and another, and they say, yes. Okay, Rafa, I remember Rafa in Almendralejo, I'm from Extremadura, and from the, Rafa Benitez has 8, 9, 10 ideas by day. And Antonio was, besides him, filtering, and Antonio said for that time, maybe Rafa Benitez has 300 ideas by month, and 1 or 2 of them are interesting. Okay, filter and develop that because he's a real machine. Thank you.
Very interesting what you're saying. Because I think, Pedro, you were saying that Rafa Benitez embraces data. But I think since we've been talking about the fact that data is still a baby in modern football in so many levels, right? Have you, and this question is for everybody, Gabor, Marius, Anselmo, and Pedro, have you come across in your experience, people who don't want to let go of their own-fashioned way? Because I think a lot of the time, what my perspective of what I've heard from professionals talking about is that sometimes, and this is true, data departments are not that developed. Even in top competitions, you find teams that you could consider top teams in Europe, and the data department is made of one person, right? So do you think that for when it comes to chairmen, owners, presidents, whatever you want to call it, there is still a lot of like scarcity when it comes to incorporating data, to the point that I think in many cases data analysts, scouts that want to work with data, want to focus on data, and they have to find ways to sell it to their own club, for them to actually say, look, I need more money in this department, I need more backing, because I don't think in many cases a lot of people in football still see how much direct impact data is having in the results of the club. And you have to almost sell it on a daily basis and find ways to not only do your job well, but to prove that what you're doing is actually having a positive impact. Have you come across people still very skeptical about the use of data, focus so much in the old-fashioned way, in the old school, or not so much nowadays? I don't know. It's a question, open question.
Can I ask something, Anselmo,
Of
about
course.
this?
Yeah.
How he approached the players to convince them that data is something that you have to look into it, because every player is a different character, different thinking. How he approached the player?
Normally in the face-to-face. So the real game changer is that the coach or someone important in the staff use the data. Normally the player go to his agent and say, okay, they have told me that my metric is this. It is true. And then you realize, so the main change I remember 5 years ago, that it was more suppliers. It was Instat, it was StatsBomb, it was Stats, it was another companies from Denmark. And 5-6 years ago, the war was that the agent with the player goes to the meeting. No, what is your data, supplier? I have this data. Then say that I have this assist. And it was very interesting in the market now to have reference, to have standards. Why? Because even, and this is what I think more important, Marius, more and more contracts every day are signed telling you will earn more money if you have this metric taking stats. This company. You have assist, yes, but assist not by marca, not by design, no, assist by stats. So in that moment, we have a paradox. It's interesting, this paradox. The most accurate data are expectatives that are not tangibles. As Gabor says, expected goals, expected goal on target, expected treat. These are the real important data. But the tangible data that you can talk is number of shots, number of goals, number of passes, percentage of passes. That is not important. What happened? The important data is not tangible, are expectatives. You can debate. The real data, the accurate data, is not important, but it's really true. So what is now the challenge with the players? To go for an agreement and to find the right balance between expectatives and accuracy. This is the key. And I'm watching now a change, because the players in Spain and the players in England that now arrives to the first division level has been trained, has been coached since they are 14, 15, 16 years old in this type of data environment. This is the main difference, for instance, that they realize regarding Brazil, Portugal, or other countries that I have worked, that normally in these countries there are not so many cultures regarding data, with exceptions like Benfica.
Yeah.
Or
I
now
think
starting,
academies, no? Academies play a big part
Yes.
in this, how academies
yes,
are developing,
when
right?
the EPPP program has been very interesting in England because obliged to have data departments in the academies. So what happened that now when a player arrives in the Premier League with 20, 21 years old to a first team in the Premier League, he has been trained for 5-6 years with charts, with expected goals, with different issues that he says, okay, it's not about punish me, it's about develop. What happened with a Portuguese player, with a Brazilian player, in my experience that I have worked in these countries also, it's more difficult to, and what happened that they arrive, and what the player understand at the end are two things: contracts and minutes. So if I have
This is true.
yes, when they say, okay, it's like you believe on a coach, you believe on that, my experience in several things, okay. At the end of the day, maybe this club from Andalusia, this club from Basque Country, maybe don't offer me a good contract, but the market is offering me. Okay, this is the maybe. No, it's a personal issue. No. If you are really good, the market is waiting you. This is my experience. Marius, thank you.
Clear. Thank you.
Yeah, Anselmo, just to say, a good thing popped into my mind that if you recall, Kevin De Bruyne just made his contract extension a few years back using a data company. So he actually showed that, this
analytics
is my
that
involvement.
with Analytics FC. So, and very interesting in this example, the director of Analytics FC was my colleague in Double Pass, Jeremy Steele. When we were auditors and we were with boring data working, boring but useful data to audit the EPPP program, the academies, we both were in love with data. But Jeremy had a more industrial vision than me. So I was in the beginning on that. So it was very interesting with De Bruyne, because De Bruyne born in an environment of the Flanders football, the north part of Belgium. And I remember another Gabor that was an Hungarian colleague in the company, that was Gabor from Szeged. And he had the industrial vision. So for that, I was in love, but I'm a simple analyst. I'm a simple analyst because I didn't have the industrial vision that Jamie have. So it's very important also for our pupils to think if you want to become an employee or if you want to become an entrepreneur. I don't have the mindset to have an entrepreneur. But Jeremy Steele, in this example, had a clear vision. So he was slower but more secure than me. So it's very interesting, this example from Jeremy Steele in Analytics FC and Kevin De Bruyne. Thank you.
Yeah, and for the EPPP, I also have an example that I think I watched the video of Phil Foden, that he was talking about his experience as a younger kid when he just made his debut, and about 6 years ago. And they showed some videos that he had to actually not just watch the data, but also create some of his own clips and review his own performance. So yeah, it's a really good point that you were saying that, this EPPP was really a game changer in English football. And this is why you see so many English talented English players coming up.
I totally agree.
Amazing. All right, guys. So what we're gonna do, if you want, we're approaching the end of the talk, but we have some questions from people watching live. So I thought what we could do is to prompt those questions to you guys, and then keep on the debate that way. But also, I wanted to remind to everyone watching live, or anyone watching the replay of this session another time, that by the end of the session, we're gonna share with you a QR code because everyone who is attending this session, as I said, either live or the replay, will be granted the possibility to have a scholarship to be part of our masters, the MSc Data Analytics in Football, and there will be a special scholarship available to those watching this video. But I'll share the QR code at the end of the session, so you can actually, guys, click on it and have access to that scholarship. Speaking of which, obviously here among the lecturers today, we have Gabor and Marius, who both are currently training in the masters. And one last question before I give access to the questions that all the viewers are prompting to us. Have you noticed, now that you're nearly at the end of doing your masters, has it really, I mean, especially because both of you have been part of the industry before you started the masters, so you already been in the ground doing the do. Have you noticed that the masters has enhanced and helped you in different ways in terms of for Marius, your vision about the future and what data can bring to you, your career, etc., and also Gabor, from the point of view of what you're doing now and what you want to take your career as well? A little bit of a view on the masters itself.
Marius, go for it.
I think the masters changed totally the way I looked football before and now. And I think the vision and the reason I entered the masters is for the future. Because I'm 33 years old.
A football career doesn't last forever, right?
So, but the way I look football totally changed.
Amazing.
The things I learned from the masters is.
Thank you for
totally
sharing that.
Different.
Thank you, Marius. And Gabor, tell us more.
Yeah, I also want to underline what Marius said, that I had a vision. I wouldn't say a tunnel vision, but I had my vision, but this way that more wide, definitely. And it was good to put in practice some ideas in Python or in R or in Tableau, and dig a bit deeper, and also to within my network with the teachers and also the classmates. So it was really useful to participate.
Good to see that perspective from you guys, and obviously to I know some of the people watching are people who are about to start the journey with us, or will start it in the future, or might be thinking about working or having a career in football. So we definitely encourage you guys to take a look at what we do in Sports at the Campus, because sessions like this are something we do, open classes, but obviously once you are part of the masters, you'll have access to, obviously, Anselmo is with us, Pedro is with us, and you guys are with us, but like many different sessions from people from football teams, from teachers, from people from the industry, from every possible angle, to have a wide and broad understanding of data in football in general. Now, without further ado, I have quite a few questions here. So I know you guys are asking in the chat, so I'm going to try to not forget anybody. But also, we have Champions League coming in not too long, so let's keep it short and neat. So first, we got Jeffrey with a very, very interesting question. I think, let me see if I can actually pop it in the screen. There it is.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. To the people who work in data football, talking about Football Manager. We all play Football Manager, and his question is actually interesting. Like, do you think that a lot of current coaches' perspective can change because of, or has changed because of Football Manager? Or what influence do you think has had in the long run, no? From when he started and we were all hooked to it? Anyone? Like, for example, any of you guys, have you used Football Manager before?
Yeah, personally, I could play only about 10 minutes with it, because I found it so time consuming that I was like, okay, I won't have a life if I would start to play with this.
I know, fair enough.
But I think it perfectly shows how a club works. So it's really detail oriented. So I recommend it for anyone who's not into football to have a glance, so they would know how difficult the job is if you are working in football.
It's interesting because Football Manager has a database about salaries and about salaries of the analysts of the teams. So there are so many details that my recommendation or my answer to this question is the details of data that most of them are hidden and are interesting. Why? Because it's not accurate. I remember when I was in Bilbao that I think, okay, where is my car? Where is my home in the beach? Because I earn more money that I that I know. So they have no accurate, but when you compare, the scale is interesting because it was same 13 level of accuracy regarding the physios, regarding the coaches, regarding not the exact money, but it's interesting to have to track the career when you are developing your path career. Sometimes you earn less money, but because you are developing yourself, and then you can obtain with risk another type of path career. So I think that Football Manager is not influencing a lot on coaches. I remember two or three that are playing it for 20 years. One is no for all of us.
Yeah, you're still. Yeah.
But I think that is more influencing the data departments. So because there are a lot of ideas, of course, we don't use normally stamina, speed. We don't use this information, but we use the models to have, okay, 4 or 5 skills, the correlation, the regression, to play with, to tweak the formulas. With this, normally is taken because you have for so many years a database for many countries, and you can track players. And I think it's more influencing the data departments than the coaches.
Interesting. Thank you guys for that. And next we have Fernando Araujo, who has a question in 2 parts. I'm going to pop it in the screen, but also read it. He says, I would like to know the opinion on what you think about the recent news regarding Sevilla's recruitment process and about the global football groups such as City Group, Eagle, etc., and what could change in the players' market in the future. Could there be conflicts of interest in the future? That's Fernando's question. Big groups. I mean, we're talking about, for example, Girona's success. Well, Girona is part of City Group, so obviously we could potentially see that there has been some sort of positive impact in the fact that they're part of the City Group. But obviously, from your perspective, and I don't know if Anselmo, you've been in touch with any, or you work for any.
You know that I teach also in university about regulation, about law. So normally in October of each year, I have to show to my pupils all the news regarding the regulations. And what is key is that one thing is that it's written down in the law, the rules, and the other what is practically applied by the institutions, because there are not enough budget to control everything. Yeah. So my recommendation regarding the conflicts of interest is to consider normally in March, April, we have the rules, we have the laws, and normally 1 year after, we know the real application of these rules. So the multi-property is something that exists, change, evolve. It's a normal, in capitalism, it's a normal movement that is in all the areas of the industries. Many of the issues that are involved on that will change because not the regulation of football, because the regulation of the European Union trust, the European Union holdings, is a very complex. But if I have to answer with a concrete answer to that, is to consider the loans. What happened with the loan players? So there is a plan regarding FIFA regarding the loans is to study and to focus, because if you change the market regarding the loans, the players that are for
On loan, yeah.
on loan, you can realize how it's changing the periods. So there are more and more periods of 4 months, of 1 semester for players loan, and less periods for 1 full season of loan players.
Interesting.
What will happen in the future? Let's analyze and let's study the data.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Anselmo. Next question, we have Guillerme, and Guillerme is asking, I would like to ask you guys the influence of how does data influence tactical decisions made by coaches during matches? Very interesting, this, as opposed to before the match or anything, during matches. If anyone can give us some insights.
Yeah, absolutely, Guilherme. Yeah, so absolutely. For example, I'm gonna put you a real example that we worked before during this season with Celta. So depending on the rival, on the opponent, of course, the scouts that we analyze, also we do the opposition analysis. This is my case also. So it depends, of course, of your opponent. You play one way or another. Of course, the coach has his own idea, okay, and he has his players, his way of playing, his tactical systems, right, that he uses. That, for example, we played against Osasuna, and in this case, Osasuna, we realized because of the data that they were one of the most of the best teams that putting on crosses, you know, and they have very good height in as an average, Osasuna, and they were one of the strongest team in the aerial duels. Okay, so for example, with this case, we give this relevant information to the manager. Okay, and also as Anselmo said before, each manager has someone who is next to him, important in the staff. Okay, in this case, is Antonio, who gives him the relevant information about what we work. Also, not only him, but the people that we are doing the tactical analysis. So in this case, data gave us this insight that they were heading a lot because they were putting on crosses, and plus they had really good size, right? So with this information, the manager decided to put and to change the tactical system, and we play more with more players inside, you know, in order to defend on crosses, be more physical, in order to try to defend this this strength of the opponent. So yes, so I can answer you to this question that of course it influenced the tactical decision made by the coach because of the data.
Amazing. I actually remember in one of the sessions of the Masters, Jose Rodriguez working at Aston Villa as a set pieces data analyst, and telling us that, yeah, sometimes at halftime, they go down to the changing room and they actually give some insights to Emery, to the coach, but also to the players themselves.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to set pieces, whether it's defending or attacking, and talking about different things that they could be looking in, some things to look at for, especially the players. Like, you know, check out this, because every time they you know, putting a corner on, they're doing this move, and they always you know, there's always a guy in the back post alone, you know, whatever it is. So it tends to happen. So thank you, Pedro. Thank you, Guillermo, for the question. And then we have Daniel Levitt. He is going to start the Masters with us in the October edition this year. So he wanted to ask, until then, when he starts the Masters, can you give me some things to think about when watching football games to start to better analyze the strategies, players, and game overall?
Well, to be honest, there are one of the best would be to use LinkedIn and X, or former Twitter, and you can find tons of persons who are really into these segments of football, so tactics, strategies, and purely data. And there are also some websites like there was Spielverlagerung, a German website, which is also in English, where René Maric was one of the main editors, who's now the under-19 coach of Bayern Munich, but previously he was assistant coach of Marco Rose at Red Bull Salzburg, and also Borussia Dortmund. And he was also working at Leeds, so I think he worked also with Victor Orta in this case. So yeah, just do your digging in the internet.
I think exactly. It's a good tip, Gabor. Like, keep your eyes open for anything. There is a lot of people, exactly, on LinkedIn, on X, Twitter, whatever, posting a lot of the work they're doing on a daily basis. I mean, our students themselves are actually, sharing on LinkedIn, especially things they're working on, things they're focusing on, which will give you good ideas on where to start from or what to start doing, etc. So yeah. Thank you, Gabo, for that. And we got the last question we have here is from Nuguna. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And he says, I would like to know from the panelists, for you guys, what is your opinion on African players and the use of data in scouting? Can that data be relevant in Africa?
Who want to respond that?
That's a good one.
Yeah, you can go for it, and then I would reflect.
Well, I think we can all answer this question clearly. I think with the use of data in scouting can be applied perfectly in Africa. Actually, is applied, so it can be applied everywhere. So every team, I think, that is working with a proper scouting department is working and applying the data in also with the African players. And actually, it's a big continent that has that got big talents, and many African players are in the best teams in the world, or also in professional football clubs all around the world. So yeah, for sure it can be applied. For example, I have one good friend in Alaves, in La Liga, who's working for the youth categories, and they, for example, they go every year to Africa, to certain part of Africa, in different cities, and they go also to the academies, etc. And they always bring good talents that they bring on trial or they sign for their team. So, for example, I think it was the case with Wakaso. I don't know if you remember the Wakaso who was playing in La Liga for Alaves, for different football clubs, and they scout this way. So it is an example of how a player, I can put you many different examples, but can be scout also in Africa. Of course, it has huge potential.
I think obviously when it comes to scouting, I know for a fact, because I know, for example, the Leeds scout for Everton for South America, for example. So I think nowadays those clubs that actually put means and money into the scouting, there is pretty much a scout for every region of the world, or a scout that shares a couple of regions of the world. So, and I think a lot of clubs are putting their eyes in Africa as much as in other areas, because obviously we know for a fact for many years now the talent of African players has been paramount in football, in European football, and I think it will continue to be, and even more. So I imagine, yeah, it's very common and present from my understanding that clubs are working actively in the scouting process also in Africa. So yeah.
We have, I remember, Pablo, that we have pupils from Africa that normally when we go for the first module, that is to create a plan, a model, a company, they consider to develop this. I will go to the point. And is my focus regarding Africa. If Europe wants to take seriously, Europe don't go for gifts. No. Consider properly the African football and the African industry. Take the leagues, go for the leagues, analyze, consider, and respect. Better than, the Africans, we will support them. No. Take seriously, analyze the leagues. There are so many professional leagues. And if you do that, you will have an industry there. Invest there, go for the videos. This is what we need for the industry. Of course, it's very romantic to say, okay, Africa will keep the romanticisms. Africa will keep the earth. Africa will keep the soul. But please, Europe, please, America, stop to tell tales regarding African football and so on, and take seriously and go for an
invest,
African invest. Go to the African Cup, taking the same level than the Euro, and this is the way to consider respect. Why? Because the level of Africa is proven. It's proven. So we need data, and if we have data from the African football, is something similar what happened 5 years ago with the women's data football. No, we support, we are sports. No, take seriously. It's a World Cup. Agreement. I remember Opta provision from the. Okay, it was working well for first time in the last World Cup, and Spain won. Okay, this is my respect. This is what we need from data, from Africa, from women's football, not the typical tweet, oh, we have done an effort. No, go to the point and take seriously. It's my vision.
I like that. Thank you. And the passion.
Just to underline what Anselmo was saying, we were also covering the Africa Cup of Nations this year, and this is thanks to FIFA, partly because they are funneling a lot of money into the African continent and its federations. So huge thumbs up for them, and let's go Africa. Hopefully good quality data will come from all of the countries, but for that you need obviously good quality videos and also videos with tactical angles. But we will get there, so slowly but surely, I think.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. And we have one last question. We're gonna bring it in from Sebastián Sierra. He actually talks about something that we were talking in the last session of the Masters as well, for the second edition of the Masters. Hi guys, I would like to ask how is the interaction with the keepers, the forgotten goalkeepers. It's like so are you giving data to them to prepare, for example, for a possible 1-versus-1 against the striker in the next match? And then he adds, like habits of the strikers in a 1-versus-1, low shots or cheap shots, for example.
I think I can go for that one because I was a video analyst. Goalkeepers are special ones, so to say. But
they got a lot of romanticism as well about them.
I was a goalkeeper myself, so
there you go.
Don't take this the wrong way. I would say they are way more detail oriented in regards of preparation. So in this case, also with the goalkeeper coaches, it was really fluent and easy process to go through all the shots and check the patterns. Which footed is the player? Where does he dribble? What type of dribbles does he use? Does he use these dummy moves within the corners that he goes to the weak spot and then drives back to the first post? So it was definitely a thing that we have done. So but not just with the goalkeepers, but also the defensive line as well.
Okay, interesting. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Gabor. And I think we don't have any more questions. So before we go, I wanted to, bear with me, guys, I wanted to share my screen with the QR code for those watching who obviously are not doing the Masters yet, and they're thinking about it, to be able to have access to a scholarship. So I'm going to share my screen with a QR code. Can you guys see my screen? Confirm to me, because I'm not sure.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Brilliant. I can see it now. So if you guys are watching this and you are wondering, I'm thinking about potentially doing this Masters, enrolling with the Sports Data Campus and the UCAM, and get involved, because my goal is to work in data in football, then if you go into that QR code, I will give you a 50% off a scholarship from the UCAM in order to access our Masters at half price. So obviously, if you're watching live, this is your moment. You can also watch a replay. You'll have the replay given to you. And if you are watching the replay of this session, it's still valid for you guys as well. So just take a few seconds and make sure you click on the QR code. And while they do that, I wanted to thank all of you guys. I think it's been a very, very insightful session. For me, it's been an absolute pleasure, not only having you, but learning from you and having so many experiences and stories from you guys. I think you've given a whole well-rounded session from every possible angle: the scouting angle, the pure data in class angle, the industry, the football player angle. I think it's been a great session. So guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank
It
you
was a
very
pleasure.
much.
Thank you so much. Also, thank you to everyone watching, whether it's live or the replay. I hope you guys enjoy the session. And if you want to get in touch with us for anything regarding data and our programs, etc., feel free to do so. And yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you guys. Enjoy the night of Champions League later on. It's been an absolute pleasure from me, from Sport Data Campus. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic evening, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you very
guys.
much, Pablo.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.